The rapid fall of Afghanistan stunning the Biden administration and this nation, quite frankly. And many of the promises, predictions, and the words of the president and his White House are coming back to haunt them.
The likelihood there's going to be the Taliban overrunning everything and owning the whole country is highly unlikely.
Well, they own the whole country now, the Taliban does. When Biden made those comments on July 8th, just about a month ago, the Taliban had already started gaining ground.
Let's rip the Band-Aid off. The Taliban have taken over Afghanistan. The U.S. has been there for 20 years. We spent $2 trillion. We trained a 300,000-man strong Afghan army. The Taliban took it over in 10 days. The country is complete chaos. Yesterday, the streets of Kabul were jammed with cars trying to get out of the city. People flooded the airports trying to get a plane out of the country.
Mr. President, some Vietnamese veterans see echoes of their experience in this withdrawal in Afghanistan. Do you see any parallels between this withdrawal and what happened in Vietnam, with some people feeling...
None whatsoever. Zero. You had to get entire brigades breaking through the gates of our embassy. 6, if I'm not mistaken. The Taliban is not the North Vietnamese army. They're not remotely comparable in terms of capability. There's going to be no circumstance where you see people being lifted off the roof of a embassy of the United States from Afghanistan.
And here's a military helicopter evacuating from Kabul, which has been compared to this photo of the U.S. military leaving during the fall of Saigon.
And one more recent promise that has been broken. That is the promise that this would not be similar to the fall of Saigon in 1975.
The Taliban is not the North Vietnamese army. They're not remotely comparable in terms of capability.
He just made it worse, and he sounds barely coherent, slurring his words. He sounds like he's either drunk or he has a cognitive problem.
There's going to be no circumstance where you see people being lifted off the roof of a embassy of the United States from Afghanistan.
The images look exactly the same. Mad scramble out of town. People clinging to wings. Total chaos. Thousands of Americans left in a war zone. Billions of dollars of military equipment just left behind for the terrorists to take. Black Hawk, drones, planes, grenade launchers, night vision goggles, Humvees. It's a war chest, all in the Taliban's hands. But Joe said there were no mistakes.
So you don't think this could have been handled, this actually could have been handled better in any way? No mistakes?
I don't think it could have been handled in a way that
Fighting with Henry. No, you're a fucking mumbling, stuttering little fuck. You know that?
We're going to go back in hindsight and look.
It's so bad even CNN can't spin it.
It is just an absolute mess. And we heard President Biden say yesterday in comments to ABC News that this is not a failure. And I think a lot of people outside that airport, particularly those taking the kinds of extreme actions we're just talking about, would like to know, if this isn't failure, what does failure look like exactly?
Biden said for months that it was going to be up to Afghan leaders and security forces to maintain power.
Because some of those soldiers had not been paid in the best part of 7 months. Because after billions of dollars, corruption meant that money wasn't getting to the men on the ground. So the gear gets handed over, and now the Taliban, including its leader who spent 8 years in Guantanamo Bay, ends up back in charge of that country.
Because he's the president, President Biden's getting a lot of criticism.
Mark this day as the day the United States of America officially fell from grace as the world's superpower due to the ineptitude, the incompetence, and the dereliction of duty by a so-called commander-in-chief, a fumbling, idiotic, confused, lying fool, incapable of extricating innocent Americans and Afghan allies from behind enemy lines in the war zone we entered 20 years ago.
We can't take 4 more years of this president. You know, I said when I got in the race, it's about a battle for the soul of this country.
Time for BS is over. The first message is for Joe Biden, our president in name only. You failed. You are a total, epic, colossal, apocalyptic failure. You failed the American people. You failed our country. You failed our military, our Army, our Marines, our Air Force, our Navy. You failed the Afghan people. You failed our allies. You failed everyone because you were a coward. You failed. History will remember this as one of the most colossal, epic political failures in America's history.
What I am worried about is the country. 4 years of Donald Trump will be very hard to overcome, but we can. 8 years of Donald Trump will fundamentally change the nature of who we are as a country.
America is more in danger today than it was last week. That's an absolute fact. We can thank Joe Biden for that. His weakness and embarrassing inability to make the right decisions on nearly everything will now have far-reaching consequences. In just a few short days, Joe Biden has put the entire world in danger. And yet, knowing all of these threats, Joe Biden still somehow stands by his decision.
No one's being killed right now. God forgive me if I'm wrong about that, but no one's being killed right now.
That's a lie. That doesn't include people falling out of airplanes or remains being found in a wheel well. Take a listen to this one.
Is the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan now inevitable?
No, it is not.
Clearly, the Taliban has taken over. They have our weapons, and we can't even get Americans to the airport. You don't have the slightest idea what you're doing. You are clueless. But more than that, you are dangerous. And you bloviate about how you're being received so well by the international community. You're America's back.
America's back. We're going to be back in the game. It's not American alone. I feel confident that we're going to be able to put America back in the place of respect that it had before.
Hey, stupid. The UK Parliament condemned the United States, holding Joe Biden in contempt for the debacle in Afghanistan.
Joe Biden created a kill zone at the airport. Every single person that wants to leave has to funnel through the same route, a route controlled by the enemy. Afghans are getting beaten, killed, or kidnapped. Americans are being blocked or shaken down. Our people are having to bribe terrorists just to get out.
Mr. Cool, do you even give a damn? Or is this all about scooping up millions like your drugged-up son from Russia, the Ukraine, and China? You are so dumb you don't even admit the fear, the chaos, the hysteria, the children shot and beaten, whipped and brutalized, people running from Taliban gunfire. You're too cool to admit that. No, nobody's died. No one's died. Are you watching cartoons all day? You have single-handedly put Americans in danger. You have single-handedly outsourced the protection of Americans to the Taliban. And don't act so stunned. Everyone knew what you and Barack were doing by emptying out Gitmo, even civilians like me 7 years ago.
This week will go down as one of the most shocking displays of government ineptitude in our nation's history. It's a disgrace that the Biden administration's incompetence and ineptitude has left thousands of Americans stranded in Afghanistan at the mercy of the murderous Taliban. It's beyond infuriating that Biden and Jen Psaki began the week on vacation as the Taliban took over the country. We didn't even hear from Joe until Monday. And at that point, he was too scared to take questions. Biden's ABC interview only raised more questions about his and his team's decision-making skills. In fact, it wasn't until late this morning that the president's team apparently realized that maybe he shouldn't head to his Delaware beach house today. He'll reportedly go tomorrow instead. Who wants to stay in the White House during a crisis anyway?
We were warned you were inept. We knew in our hearts that you were. You have consistently had the worst foreign policy strategy and diplomatic responses in recent history. The truth is, Mr. President, you should not only be impeached, as commander-in-chief, you should be court-martialed.
And so what you have is groupthink. You have Austin, the Secretary of Defense. You have Milley, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs. You have the President of the United States. You have the Secretary of State. And apparently none of the four of them have a clue about the real world. Now, if that doesn't scare you, then listen to the Chinese communists talking about Taiwan, and that Taiwan had better realize that Joe Biden can't possibly protect them. Or listen to the Europeans. I mean, the president today either lied to the country or is so totally uninformed that it's scary. But our NATO allies are enraged. For him to say, oh, nobody's really angry at us, you have to wonder, I mean, what is he processing?
You see, this is what we have to find out.
That would allow him to think that he could just be that directly dishonest with everybody in the world.
Yes, sir. I can't thank you enough for your insight. Even South Korea is saying we'd like you to move things along faster, getting out of our country. This is a disaster of monumental proportions. Sir, thank you very much for joining us.